Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Excuse me, we're going to have to take a brief pause. I'm going to go see my therapist. Now, if you said that 20, 30 years ago, people would look at you like, oh, you have a little bit of problem. Something's up with them, a little mental issue. Now, when you say that, people respect you. It's almost as if it's expected that you have a therapist. If you don't, why not? Let's talk about that today and look at therapy in different forms and different scenarios and situations. She's an amazing psychotherapist and works with people of all different ages, even couples in relationships, which we're going to get to in a moment as well. And she's Susie Engel, and she's back with us. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, Steve. How are you?
You're my therapist. I'm in therapy every time we get together. I learned so much.
That's a great thing.
Well, it opens your mind, and it's something that can enable you to see things from, I like to call them camera angles. You watch TV, a movie, they shoot it from over here, they shoot it from over here. But if it's you, you're only seeing the view in front of you. You're not seeing the view potentially from the side or whatever it might be. And somebody like yourself presents that to us. And sometimes it can be a friend, but more times than not, the friend is just going to tell you what you want to hear. And they're not going to support you the way you need to be supported, right?
Right. And, we've spoken about couples, but even friendships. If we look at friendships too, there's a reason why certain people are our friends because they serve a purpose or they fill a need or whatever that is. Or sometimes we just have downright healthy friendships, which will also open up our perspective. So I love that different photo angles.
Yeah,
I like that.
Different camera, the different camera angle.
Camera angle.
And to your point, and this is fresh in my mind, so I'm going to share it. Partnered with a longtime friend and colleague, and we're starting a separate company. And we're at the point where we're going to hire some people. So he said, I've been doing this, and he's been doing sales for a lot of years. He said, I've been doing this for 20 years, this one particular tactic, and that is giving the person basically a personality test. It's a bunch of questions, takes them about 20 minutes, and then you get back a profile. We pay for it. But I have to tell you, talking with the person over the weekend and then having them do this assessment, it mirrored exactly what we thought and was all good. He scored a B, which is fantastic. It's fine. It's all good. But then I started looking a little bit deeper in terms of how he answered some of the questions and how it correlated to what came back in terms of his strengths and we all have some of his weaknesses. Right. And I equate that to therapy, where it helps you see certain things that you're not seeing. You don't, you're just living your life every single day. It's profound.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, those personality tests wasn't it that Briggs and Myers?
Yes, that's one of them. Thing? Right.
That takes way more than 20 minutes, but that's a fad. Like people like it. They like to take those tests and say like, where am I on these quadrants of whatever that test is?
Yep.
And, but I think that you and I have spoken briefly about how, the interview process, we haven't spoken about the interview process because you just brought this up for your new venture, but the interview process or those personality tests or even listening to these podcasts, they might spark a new perspective or like you're saying, the camera angle. Am I getting that right? The camera angle?
Mm-hmm.
I love that. To say, oh my gosh, I never thought of something that way, or I've never heard of this. And my goal here is to have a broader audience than one person per hour or a small group at my office or what have you. And be able to spark people's curiosity about themselves.
I know what you're saying there because I never used to have that curiosity. And once I started doing, a little bit of the work on myself, I'm thirsty to learn about myself in different situations that present themselves. Um, it's interesting clarity you get once you start going through the process of even talking to a therapist.
Yes. Or like we've spoken about too, sometimes people have that type of family that's just good enough where you sit around the table and everybody's a little less phobic about their feelings or their failures or their experiences, and they're a little more validating or understanding or connecting. And then I don't think it's very common, but I think that there are a percentage of families who function like that.
Oh,
But I think that that's why therapy, right? But I think that that's why therapy is really important because there's a whole universe of becoming less mindless, more mindful, more self-aware, able to reflect, able to say, wow, I don't have to fear failures or live in this cyclone of shame or blame, whatever it is that people kind of carry. So therapy is really, really great. I went to college in New York City. So this is more than 20 or 30 years ago, as you were referencing. I don't even know how many years ago. I'd have to count the decades. Excuse me,
they all go together after a while.
which is fine. But when I was in New York City, it was during the crack. I was in Manhattan, so it was the crack epidemic. The a few years in, or 4 years in, it was the AIDS epidemic. And
I tell you the year. I'm because I was on the radio and we would never say the word AIDS. It
oh,
was until about 1985-ish, around
yeah,
there,
yeah. But the crack epidemic was the late 70s.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the AIDS thing started, and that's interesting, like good reference point for you. So but the issue is, I mean, my point of bringing this up is when I was in New York, everybody like so friendly. I had pockets of friends all over Manhattan, some in Brooklyn, but mostly Manhattan. And everybody would be like, hey, what's your name? What do you do? And who's your therapist? But outside of Manhattan, that wasn't the norm. So now I think you're right. Like there's a far fewer people have a stigma about this in terms of saying, oh, you're going to therapy? You know, what's your problem? It's
Mm.
not pathological to say, I want to grow or develop. That's not a sickness. To say, I want to talk to a therapist, like, and I want to grow and develop.
You bring up a fantastic point, Susie. It's usually thought that if you're going to a therapist, you have a quote unquote problem, but it doesn't have to be that. I just want to learn about myself. I want to better myself. I just want to get a little clarity on life in general.
Yeah, it's called personal development.
Yeah.
And half of the problems we have are so common, even if we call them the labels that our society calls them, even if we say, like, oh, it's my anxiety or my depression. I mean, my clients speak that way about themselves. And I was like, that's interesting. I thought you were so and so. I thought you were Steve. And they're like, it's my anxiety, like it's all their definition. Yeah,
Defining who they
yeah,
are.
yeah, and there's so much more. So little by slowly, the therapeutic process, I don't think is like, I mean, yes, does it solve problems? People come in with presenting problems. That's really, really more common than what I'm talking about.
So let's go a little bit deeper. So when somebody comes in, is it usually them presenting a situational, here we go again, the word problem, or do they just say in general, I'm having anxiety, I'm having depression, or is it do they start with the situation?
Yeah, I think it's probably um, I don't know what the percentages would be, but some people might say, I have a lot going on. I just turned 30. There's a lot of stress at my workplace. I just started a new job, and that's the descriptive. And that's really rich. And then there are some people who come in and I say, "Hey, what's happening?" And they will say, "I've been depressed all of my life." And then, we'll start discussing that. And so the problem is I feel depressed all of my life. And then, so some people start distinguishing that there was a before and after, you know,
Uh,
maybe they weren't depressed all of their lives. Maybe there was a time where they were free-spirited, or maybe they have been depressed all of their lives. And then they start understanding the attachment models that you and I have discussed
mm,
briefly, but at least we're bringing up the issues so people can start thinking of this because we have paradigms in our lives. But, and then there are people who just say, well, this is a smaller percentage who say, you know, um, I know that there's more to my life than I'm experiencing now.
ooh, see, that's profound. It's one thing, and
Yeah,
I'm not minimizing anything, but with the person that says, I've been depressed my whole life, it's almost as if they waited and waited, maybe afraid to go to therapy, and then
mhm,
finally showed up. But
mhm.
then the other person that says, it's more for me out there. Something's misaligned. I can't put my finger on it.
Yes, yeah. And that's the population that says, well, why not? This isn't a stigma for me. This is like that curiosity, where we'll use that word. This is my personal development. And that's a great flavor for
Hmm.
therapy. And it's an investment in our
That there's another thing that we forget. It's an investment in you, regardless of how it's paid for. Some take their insurance and copays,
insurance.
whatever it might be.
Yeah,
Um, how about let's go to relationships. It's my belief, having lived life a little bit, that before couples enter into a serious relationship, and certainly before engagement in marriage, therapy, or counseling, coaching, whatever it's going to be, anything to talk together and realize who you are. You do to a point in the relationship, but you don't really go deep. You don't really figure out what each person needs. What do you need? What do you need? Tell me right now. What do you need in a relationship?
what do I need?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you. Um, I need everything. I mean, as independent as I am, I need my significant other, because I do have a significant other, to um, understand me. That's a
Mm,
big one. To, we've talked about this before, but to intuitively know if I need comfort, to be able to comfort me. And if I do ask specifically, because you're saying, how do people function in couples, and know to ask for what you need. And when somebody has the guts to say what they need, which I think couples therapists who are trained, they're like marriage and family therapists specifically for couples, like so great, and families. Um, they're trained, and a lot of times they will say, well, how do the two of you function when you ask each other for what you need? And for me, my significant other responds, and what's the threat if I say what I need? And what's the threat if I don't like the way something is done, and I can actually say that as an adult? I don't sound like a child. I sound like an adult when I'm speaking to my significant other.
mm,
And he actually, like, my barometer is with any relationship is, how does this person respond to me? I don't need a drop down 2 hour conversation. I need action. And I
mm.
love my significant other.
Do you
He's a
feel?
great person.
I'm
Yeah,
happy for you. You know,
yeah,
it's hard to
yeah,
find somebody that you feel that you're connected with on all levels.
yeah.
Do you feel that many couples are afraid to say what they need, especially as time goes on, because there is a fear of saying it to the other person, and you want to protect them as well, and you're afraid that they're going to think that they're not doing what they should be doing, so you can kind of sugarcoat it, and as opposed to like the five love languages. This is what I've learned even in recent years. I know what I need words of affirmation, well, affection first, words of affirmation. Acts of service, gifts, no, I don't need that. Acts of service, but there are some people, especially men, that will do acts of service for their partner, thinking that, look what I did for you. I cut the lawn, I did this, and I did this, I took care of this, did it, thinking that that's how they show love. But their partner is thinking, I just wanted to go to a winery with you today, but you're busy doing that. They don't get it. They don't get because it hasn't been discussed. Hasn't been
Right,
discussed.
and no fault of one or the other, except for the fact that there's some sort of phobia to know how to communicate. Or, I don't really like using the word communication. What I like to say is they don't know how to express themselves.
Mm,
And you're bringing up a very important point, and I don't want to skim over it, is this. And, even that example I gave a few podcasts back about, the woman, and I didn't really want to get into like the gender thing, but the guy with the road rage. So, like, he'd have the whole family in the car, and my client was the woman
hmm
and her boyfriend. And when he got into a funk, he would veer close to somebody just to scare them. And you could
mm,
see, like, she could see visibly, like the drivers next to them, like visibly, or getting stressed out about the way this
sure.
guy drives. Or the guy would like veer close to scare the kids in the car, like her kids in the car. And so look, we've got a lot of things that we can't skim over with this. One is, we have basic paradigms in our lives. We have parents or lack thereof, and we have early friendships, which are spin-offs of how we function in our family settings. And if we're fear-based to say what we need, because it might bother somebody, and all children go through this
hmm
because parents are really, really busy. If we learn that we are a burden, we are going to function like that in an adult relationship unless we've gone to therapy and worked it through and become self-aware.
Hmm. See, this is what we intended to do today, I feel, because as you're saying that, I'm processing it. And, what could the burden be if you had challenges as a child? I'm going to go hypothetical, yeah, even pulling from my childhood. I was a picky eater. I would eat, this is what
Common.
bologna, hot dogs, Hostess, and milk. Bologna, hot dogs, Hostess, and milk.
And
That
look
was
at
it.
how you've grown.
Unfortunately, when I was a child, I grew a little too much and got bullied because of it. But
I know, and you went
as you said,
not well.
burden, I got that visual that I was a bit of a burden. And I remember going to like a holiday gathering with family, and there's turkey. And it's like, oh well, Steve doesn't eat turkey. We're gonna have to make a hot dog for him. So I felt like a burden. But as you're saying it, you clicked this in my mind where I don't want to be a burden in adult life to others. So even expressing certain things where you don't want to rock the boat in a relationship, you might just pull back. I'm going hypothetical here, but you might
Yeah,
just pull back and not say, listen, I really need you to show me that you appreciate me just a little bit more. You lean back because you don't want to, poke the nest, if you will. But that,
right.
like we say, that all comes from childhood. Burden, That's where I focused on that word.
Right. And there are a lot of children who are finicky eaters. And there are a lot of parents who are frustrated because they have really busy lives. Or what happens if you have many siblings and the mom and dad are busy with one of the children who have like a sports event or who skinned their knee, and you also are crying out because you need something as an infant. You start registering this right away. You start non-verbally understanding, like, ooh, maybe I should yell louder, or maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't shout out, and there's all sorts of research about it too. I'm not even making this stuff up.
Right.
But then but you're doing a good job right now, Steve, because you're saying, oh, that's why I would sugarcoat something, or you might not sugarcoat, or that's why I might pull back and not be demanding if you have this. Ooh, I was kind of a burden, and you weren't a burden, you were just a kid.
Right. Right. But
You were just a child.
the perception, how you internalize it, is the people around you saying, oh, well, okay. Yeah. So you feel like a burden. I'll tell you, when I
And the
speak with people,
faces, yeah,
yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
the rolling of the eyes and
Susie, I could tell you where I was, and even just one situation, grandma's house, also my aunt's house, Thanksgiving, you know, yeah, yeah, I was embarrassed too as a kid because the other kids and cousins and everything, they eat this, they eat that, and I'm like, can I have a Twinkie?
Yeah, but then you're saying, why are the other kids managing all this? And it becomes a way bigger deal than what it is,
For sure.
and then that plays out in very interesting ways with friendships, with adult relationships, with marriages. Now, getting back to what you asked at the start, and I know our time goes really fast,
It does.
but you asked if people are entering, like maybe young couples are engaged for the first time,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Um, it really depends on how they're functioning, but you know, to your point, why not? Why not go to therapy? And the thing about couples therapy is that each person in the couple should be thinking about themselves and their own development and growth and evolution, not what he needs to fix or what she needs to fix. That
Yep.
is not the issue.
Yep.
You know, or what if I have clients, they've had three bad marriages or three abusive marriages. Now, the childhood experience, we're talking about food, that's not about abuse. That's just like, or if you had more siblings and your parents were busy with your siblings, that's not neglect. That's just like the happenstance of we're a child dependent on our parents and we're internalizing because that's all we can do. We can't challenge and say, what's wrong with our parents? That they're not perfect enough to take care of all of us equally. Instead, we're saying, what's wrong with me?
Hmm.
And I have to be more perfect. Yeah.
What you
So,
think of, so many relationships, marriages fail, that if this was done before, I betcha there would be less of a failure rate because you would start realizing over time just what you said. Who am I? Why do I do what I do? Why am I afraid? Why do I have let's say your partner hangs out with friends, and you're at home and you look at it like, you get jealous or you get angry. Again, hypothetical, you might be thinking, maybe separation anxiety, but you don't even know what's going on there. Or let's say you go into a relationship and let's say the other person, there was some abuse, or just parents had, a lot of turmoil, and they're,
they're
they're,
reacting.
or they love that. They
Or
not
they
love it,
no, like the habit of the chaos.
the chaos. And if it's not
Yes.
there,
Yeah.
then they're not,
They're a
something's
little
not right. It's off because
unsettled
unsettled because we always go back to what feels comfortable, especially from our
until
childhood,
until therapy.
until therapy or until divorce. Uh,
Until divorce,
right.
which we're going to do right now, right?
Yes, we're divorcing ourselves until next week. How do we find you, Susie? You're wonderful. How do we connect with you?
Oh my gosh. So Go to my website. It's my name. Don't misspell it. It's Susan Engel, SusanEngel hyphen, and my title, LCSW.com.
Licensed clinical social worker. Gotcha.
LCSW, yes.
Beautiful talking with you today. Thanks for, I hate to use the analogy, peeling back the layers on therapy, but that's kind of what we did, how it looks, how it supports, and different ways to embrace it.
Open the perspective.
Thank you so much for today.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.